Hello and welcome to London Real. My name is Brian Rose. Joining us today is Mr. Mike Moghaddas as a guest host, as Mr. Nick Gabriel is in Cape Town getting too much sun. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Dude,
Appreciate it.
You were actually our very first guest on London Real.
I was.
Back in the guinea pig days. So props to you for being brave enough to come in.
Yeah.
But now we can get you a little bit more one-on-one, which is very cool. So thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. I believe in you guys.
Hey, man, I appreciate that vote of confidence, man. That's awesome. You were just saying you just got back from some crazy conference in Barcelona, right?
Yeah, we were in Mobile World Congress. It's the biggest mobile phone conference or mobile wireless conference in the world.
Is it always there?
It used to be in Cannes.
Okay.
It used to be in Cannes, and it used to be a little, like 500 people or 1,000 people would show up just to cut deals.
This is like, what, 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
This was up until, I think, 2004 or 5.
Okay.
And then it changed over to Barcelona. It just grew. There were like 60, 70,000 people show up. But
60,
back in the days in Cannes, we used to go just like, sell our portfolio of products, whether mobile phone operators, and we would hire big yachts.
Okay. It's all about the backroom deals at those conferences, right?
Back in the days, yes.
Okay.
Now, well, it still is. But now it's bigger, so it's a show as well.
Okay.
They launched their products, Apple is there, Google is there, all the handset companies, all the mobile phone operators, all the software and app creators and vendors. The only company not there is Apple.
Really?
Yeah, Apple's like, screw you guys. Come to us.
They don't have to be there? They don't need to be there?
No, they have their own Apple World, and they have their own conferences in San Francisco.
Okay.
And they say, if you want to see our stuff, come to us.
Fair
we
enough.
don't go anywhere.
I guess they don't have to sell, right?
No, they don't.
Wow. We were talking earlier about what was it? You're talking about intellectual design? What were you talking about? Like, say Apple's the leader right now, and say,
well, when it comes to product planning, essentially there are very few areas where you can produce products, hardware. I'm not 100% yet, but back in the days up until a few years ago, 70% of all hardware was produced in China. So
okay.
If you take Foxconn that produces products for Apple, they produce products for everybody else as well.
Right.
They make a lot of Sony products and Nokia products, a bunch of others. And so the actual production and the bill of material for the cost of parts and it's the same for everyone.
Okay.
Now,
you've been to China? You toured the Foxconn plants, right?
Yes.
Dude, you gotta tell me what that's like.
It's like a city, man.
I was reading this article in the New York Times in January, and it kind of blew my mind, but didn't, because you had talked about it before. Yeah. But it talked about how they can scale up so fast over there that I think it was Jobs had an iPhone prototype. This is 2006, I think, and he was carrying around in his pocket, and the screen was scratching. And he said to everyone, "I want a glass screen." And everyone's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? We got to go in production in like 8 weeks." He's like, "I want a glass screen. I'm not selling something that's going to scratch." And so executives left that day to go to China to try to figure out how they were going to first of all, manufacture it and get it placed and all this crazy stuff. And they toured a plant, and the guy was like, "Look, we can make your stuff here, and we've just built a wing in case you accept the contract," or something crazy like that. And they were able to scale up and transfer 30,000 workers and build this thing in like a weekly basis. And they were saying not only the U.S. can't do that. That it's not only a matter of money, a matter of salaries. It's just you can't get that many workers to move to some place in the middle of nowhere and stay in dormitories and work 12 hours a day. So, what's your perspective on that?
I got a lot of perspective on that. Because the thing is this, I've been in China since 1997, in Hong Kong and China doing work. And we set up factories in China in early 2000, 2001, 2002, both for Sony and later Sony Ericsson. We used Flextronics, we used our own.
Did you produce most of your Sony Ericsson electronics there?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Today, I think 90% of all consumer electronics are made in China.
Okay. Wow.
I don't think anyone. I pretty much could say even 100%, but I'm not sure. Maybe there are some really high-end design products and audio products that are made in Western world, in Germany or US and Japan even. But China is producing almost all consumer products. Now,
it was Japan in the 70s, right?
Japan in the 70s.
Okay.
So
they had the high tech side of it. They had the skilled.
Yeah, what they use, there's a philosophy most of the Asian countries use, and they started with Japan. They say copy, learn, master.
Wow.
First you copy products for very cheap, then you learn how to make them so you can actually be on par. Then you master and innovate new stuff.
Okay.
Japan did it, then Korea did it.
Right.
So with Samsung and others, and Hyundai, Kia, all the cars are now. I think either Kia, the car manufacturer, gives you 7-year warranty.
Really?
It's crazy.
Kia.
7 years warranty on a car. You buy a brand new car, 7-year warranty. So now China is doing that. And China has changed since when I was there until now. For instance, in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona now, I mean, Huawei and ZTE, which are the two telecom vendors, they give you network for mobile operator. Now they produce handsets as well, mobile phones.
Huawei and
ZTE.
ZTE, okay.
Huge.
So they were providers, but now they're producing phones as well.
As well. So
Okay.
no, sorry, they're not providers like a mobile operator. They're mobile network,
Networks.
like Ericsson and Nokia.
Okay.
They give you the backend infrastructure to build a mobile phone operator.
Okay.
So they used to do that, and I think they kind of learned that from Motorola and Ericsson. I don't want to say copy, but they learned it very, very copyish.
Okay.
And now they're doing their own. Now they're coming in the mobile phone market in low end and very cheap phones.
Okay.
But they're going to scale up, I'm sure. And they had the biggest stands. So I don't know how many thousand people were there, but like literally you could see, I mean, Chinese everywhere.
Really?
Very interesting.
Which is rare probably for those conferences.
Absolutely.
It was
It
Western.
used to be Nokia. It used to be Sony Ericsson.
Okay.
Now it's a lot of Asians.
Interesting. So they're learning.
Very much learning.
And mastering soon.
Yes, but there's a big gap yet, and that's product planning and marketing. So if you're going back to the Apple discussion we had earlier, question, a Dell computer you might buy for $400, $350, whereas a Mac is still over $1,000.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what the retail price is, $1,200, $1,400.
Yeah, something like that.
But it's not cheap. Whereas they are pretty much manufacturing the same company. It's Foxconn and those guys manufacturing everyone's.
Okay.
So why is it that Apple makes 4 times the margin than Dell?
So you're paying a premium for that design.
It's a combination. So the product planning, in product planning, what you do is you're looking for a philosophy, getting a product which is half a step ahead of a customer. You and I, if we ask for a product now and they decide to produce that product 6 months from now, that product is outdated.
It's too late, right?
Too late.
Well, that's what they used to say when they asked about jobs. They're like, do you do customer studies and stuff? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't expect them to know what they want. I'm going to tell them what they want.
Yes, and that level, and the level of companies like Sony, Samsung, Apple, they can't copy anymore. They have to innovate.
Right.
They have to look ahead and see where the market is going and try to find a product to position for that 6 month or 9 month ahead. So that's the art. And then how you market it, how you create demand for it. Once you do it, then everybody else will copy you. So once your iPad is out, everybody will do a similar type of pad.
Right.
And
But is it too late by then?
well, it's not necessarily too late, but you don't make the margins like the other guys are doing.
Okay.
So
'Cause
essentially,
you have to compete on price at that point.
yes. So the key to product planning is being half a step ahead of the customer, meaning looking the future, see the trends from multiple different ways, not only your own industry, but also other industries. And the second part is to be able to create a product which is a lifestyle product. Now, lifestyle product, everybody thinks it's a fluffy term. It's not. It's for your price protection. Once you do a lifestyle-based product, it's the product that you would use day in, day out. You use your iPhone all the time.
Yeah.
It becomes personalized. It becomes part of your life. Because of that, you're stuck to that. And it's not only hardware, because that's connected to a market, to iCloud, et cetera, et cetera. So you are not connected to a set of services through a product and you're locked in.
Okay.
That's what you call, there are others, Porsche is a lifestyle product.
Because it brings your identity into the product?
Exactly. It's your, it's connection to your emotional part of it. It's not necessarily your intelligence and logical sense. It's your emotional sense as well.
Right. It's not just A to B. When you get in that Porsche, you feel special.
Exactly. So once you plan a product, you have to look in multiple different spheres. So when I used to be a product planner, when I made products, I had to look at it like. So I learned that's a Sony school of thought, by the way.
That's Sony school of thought.
Sony created that, and Apple has actually took it to the next level
Really?
now. Yeah.
So Sony, was that like the Walkman? I mean, was
the
that
Walkman,
Okay.
the PlayStation, if you think
Okay.
about it, the way they got into the music business, to the movie business. I mean, they literally, I think the last maybe innovative product was Aibo, the little, robot. They had an artificial
okay.
intelligence robot that would learn and dance and
I
bunch
think
of
I
stuff.
heard about it.
It was late 90s. After that, they didn't innovate anything else. Whereas Apple came and did exactly what Sony did, the digital music players as well, and the software like similar to iTunes, but it wasn't good at all.
Okay.
Whereas Apple came, they did iPod. And iPod was just the next level because of combination of design,
Yeah, that's
ease
what
of
did it.
use, user experience.
So I was using MP3 players in New York. I was listening to a Sony. It was like a sport thing. You could strap it to your arm.
That's
Actually, I was listening to it when the planes went in the World Trade Center. I was flagging a cab, and I had like it held 12 tracks only, and I was using MP3 players. This is 2001, obviously, or 2001, right? Of course.
This is one, yeah.
And then when the iPod came out, like 2002 or 2003, I was like, bullshit. I've been using MP3 players forever, but everyone loved it, and it's because they marketed it, and it was huge, and it was marketing, right?
It was yeah.
It wasn't marketing. It was a lifestyle device, wasn't it?
And it comes and the marketing aspect of it is how you position a product in the market. And once you position it in a way that becomes part of your lifestyle. So if you remember, iPod was very simple marketing back in the days. It was like a shadow of a person dancing and doing stuff. Very simple.
But cool.
Yeah, very cool, very, very slick, very simple. They went after simplicity.
Yeah.
Even the design, I remember I was designing products. I went back to our designers and I was saying, you gotta look at this. They're going retro. Reason you could see a trend in the market, Mini was coming in. The car Mini.
Yeah, Mini. Okay.
So that brand was gone for 30 years or something.
Yeah.
I think there was no Mini being produced for a long time.
Yeah.
Mini came in, and then Volkswagen Beetle
Yeah, the
came.
Beetle came back, right?
So iPod was riding on a retro trend overall in the market.
Okay.
So they brought this, squarish, very simple.
Very simple, yeah.
And nothing in the iPod was Apple technology. The media player was Portal Player. The UI, the user interface, except the jog that they were using, which was theirs.
That circular.
The circular
piece,
thing,
yeah, was
which
nice.
it was theirs, and
Okay.
the hardware design, and the UI was a company called Pixo.
Okay.
So nothing was theirs, but they put it together, and that's the key to product planning. How you assemble, you pull together the best, and put it in a way that brings it to life.
Okay. Were you at Sony Ericsson at the time?
Yeah.
You were one of the founders of Sony Ericsson?
Yes.
What year was that?
2000. I joined Sony Corporate 2000, and I think it was October 2001 that we did. We started earlier, but it was clear that we did the joint venture.
So you started with Sony and
Yes.
then partnered up with Sony Ericsson.
Yes, funny enough.
Okay, that is crazy. I thought it was the other way around. And you're saying that whole mindset was a Sony mindset of
The product planning, I learned product planning, and I had done startups before. I'd worked before in other companies, and successful in parts as well. But I gotta admit, I learned product planning in Sony.
okay.
And the way if you sit with the product planners, first of all, a bunch of crazy people. Nobody wears suits and nothing. Everybody's like, it's very open. It's very
Even in Sony.
back in the days in Sony, product planning is was the untouchable group.
Okay.
Because you sit like a spider in a web, and you're the one responsible to create and from nothing an idea of a product.
Okay.
And then once you create and you pull together from technology, from innovations, market design, from multiple different areas, pull it together. You look at the cost, you look at the pricing, you look at the gap. So you actually look at the entire thing as if you're creating a business for each product.
Okay.
And then you come up with a price band, where you position it, the idea, and then you go pitch it to your sales and marketing team and your tech team. And they'll
Who think you're crazy.
Yeah, they're like, oh fuck, no way we can do it, like this thin, or there's no way you can have a color display. Or no, we were talking about back in the days where mobile phone didn't have color display yet.
Right. I mean, you were competing with the standard Nokia phone, right? The other
the
one just had
shitty,
just the crappy basic Nokia phone,
Exactly.
which was king for years, right?
Years.
I remember my first Sony Ericsson phone. Yeah, I was the first one to have
The color display,
the interactive display, and yeah.
But again, I mean, it's very interesting because that business is now turning into almost like a fashion business. And
We were talking about the Beats earlier, the Beats headphones by Dr. Dre, right?
Beats headphones by Dr.
It is
Dre.
it's a fashion statement, isn't it?
Fashion statement, 100%. It's like your sneakers for the youth, for the young people.
Right. It's like Air Jordans back in the
Air
day.
Jordans, man. Yeah, you want your own headphone with your own color and your own style, and if you wear Beats, you're the cool because it has a heavy bass. It's more hip hop driven, and that type. If you're wearing Bose, it's more expensive. Maybe you're a moneyed up yuppie. It's interesting, It doesn't necessarily mean that, but that's how it's perceived in the market.
Is that a lot of marketing dollars spent on that?
I think so. I think, for instance, a product like Beat, it's just purely marketing and branding because they don't make a product. I don't think they have proper R&D. Now it's acquired by HTC, but before that, I think it's 100% OEM product made in China, probably with some producer, and then they brand it. But they design it, they brand it, they give them the way it should look, and then they market it.
And then Dre shows up everywhere and promotes the hell out of it.
Yeah, and he made the money. They sold it for $300 million.
He went to some producer or something like 5 years ago, and he's like, I want to do this. And the guy's like, why don't you make headphones? And Dre was like, why the hell would I want to do that? And it was just, that was very unique at the time for a hip-hop guy to go into hardware design, wasn't it?
Well, I think if you look at, actually, the hip-hop musicians are probably the smartest guy, and they're the one that make the most money. 50 Cent,
Vitamin Water.
Jay-Z, Vitamin Water. They know that music is brand creator. It doesn't necessarily the money maker.
That's what 50 said about his last album. He said, I learned from P. Diddy. He said, my album is just a marketing tool. It's like a commercial. He's like, I don't need to make money off that. He's like, it's just to keep me relevant.
It's 100% true. And if you look at, it's nothing new, even in tech market. If you look at gaming industry, like a PlayStation.
Yeah.
PlayStation doesn't make any money on hardware, essentially. Okay. It's basically breaking even, maybe even loss leader on the hardware. So when you buy a PS3, it's not the profit. Okay. But every game that is sold in the market, Sony gets 8%.
Okay. And that's where they make their cash.
And they're making, I remember 2006, they were making 70% of Sony Corporate's profit.
70%?
70%.
The PlayStation?
PlayStation Group.
Wow, man, that's hard
and
to
they
believe.
had 2% of headcount.
Wow.
And bear in mind, Sony Corporate they own 50% of all movies made since 1950 because they bought MGM as well.
Really?
They have 25-30% of the music market. They have financial industry, and they have a huge consumer product, TVs, everything.
Right.
None of that make as much money as a PlayStation. So PlayStation is essentially the brand and the hardware. They give away more or less the hardware on cost. They don't lose money, but on cost. So that you get a baseline of users. Okay. Once you hit 100 million people having PlayStation 3, the more games sold, the more money Sony makes. And they're not producing those. They have a studio that makes some games, but 80% of games are made by other studios.
Right, okay. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Well, Apple had a similar phenomenon. When the iPhone came out, it was a very small revenue, and now it's over 50% of their revenues is the phone, right?
Amazing.
Maybe more than that. Amazing, right?
It's amazing.
More than the iMacs and everything.
Not only that, they changed the market. I would say Apple changed the mobile industry. And I tell you why. Because before that, they came from a user perspective, saying, you know what, we are going to democratize the UI, the user interface, so that every application is on the first layer. You don't need to click 3 times before you get to an application, which was the UI back in the days.
Back in even the Sony Ericsson days.
Everyone. So there were touch phones as well, but nobody thought about UI like that. So Apple came with their own OS, with their own UI, and you scroll it, and every application you download is on the same level.
Now, this is something I don't think about normally.
Yeah, it's
how important that is.
It is very, very. In products, ease of use is the key. You buy Apple product today, you don't get a manual, I think, even.
I don't think so. It just comes, it says made by the people in California, or designed by the people in California.
Yeah. And because they are just...
There's no need.
That's their aim, to come up with a product that what we would call plug and play. Yeah. Just open and intuitively how to use it.
Yeah, that's strong.
It's the most difficult thing is to make things simple.
That's well said. I remember when I first bought my first iMac, I opened it up and plugged it and played it, and it was done. There was no complicated manuals. I didn't have to fuck with my router and any nonsense. It was just like, okay, done.
Absolutely.
And that's why I tell people, once you go Mac, you never go back.
And the funny thing was, I bought the iPod because it was my job as well. We had months with them, but I'm like, wow, this is so good. Maybe I should buy an iMac as well.
Crazy, huh?
So I bought the Mac Pro ones, and I bought it in Cupertino in their own staff store. I was up in California. There's another story that I can tell you later. And I said, can I have one? Because we were giving Apple guys phones for free. They're like, nah, fuck it, you gotta buy it. I'm like, well, I just gave you 200 phones for free. They're like, no, you gotta buy it. So at least give me the staff discount. So one of the guys were cool enough took me to the Cupertino shop that they have in their own campus, and so I got a discounted. But it's so good.
So there's a crossover there.
Dude, I had this MacBook for 5 years. I don't think I turned it off for 5 years.
That's crazy.
It was running
That's
for
crazy.
5 years.
Well, now with the new Lion software on Apple, they're trying to make the iMacs look like iPads now. They're trying to make it all kind of this whole app store. I mean, like I just have my iMac here, and I bought Final Cut 10, the latest one, and I bought it in an app store. You know, there's no, it's like, yeah.
Well, the strategy always have been this. And funny enough, it started with Sony, because Sony used to have multi-screen TV, computer, and the phones.
Okay.
And they own the content. They got games, movies, and music. So the idea was so that you actually, who owns the center of your living room in your TV? So your set-top box or your PlayStation or Xbox, whatever that is. But in Sony's idea was that you want to be able to bring you the content that you want across multi-different devices without you thinking about it. Now, this
is 10 years ago a concept.
Yeah.
But just a concept.
Still not done yet,
Yeah,
because it's very difficult. You're talking about multiple different OS platforms on different devices. Mobile phones had non-open operative systems. Now they're open, and they're still not the same. Now, the only one that has succeeded pretty much now is Apple. Apple is pulling it off.
Except they couldn't break into the TV business, could they?
They will do so.
They will. You think they will? They said they've got some secret plan for that.
I would say that the only open frontier right now is TV. TVs has been dumb box. Now that it's opened up, a lot of TVs. I think Samsung and LG as well, but definitely Samsung has open OS on that. So
it's the future, huh?
system.
I know with the Apple TV, I've got 2 of the boxes, Apple TVs, and you can stream movies on there, but the TV networks just dried up on them. And they were obviously the cable providers in the U.S. are very strong, and they were just like, no, we're not going to let you go down that avenue. But, you know, I'm sure they're going to be persistent. It will change, right?
All the user-generated content today is on YouTube, Ustream, you know, Vimeo, etc. So that's just the beginning. And then you have, you know, Netflix, you have Hulu, you have other services. I think what's happening right now is a lot of these services are becoming IP based.
Okay, explain that.
Basically it goes from being direct broadcasting to basically packet data, internet based.
Okay, but Hulu's not available over here, is it?
Not yet.
Okay,
but there are similar.
But Netflix is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself less and less watching television. I'm downloading documentaries or downloading this and that, and you know, I want to choose my programming. I don't want to see what someone else wants me to see.
It's the HBO model. If you think about it, it's HBO when it came out in TV business, broadcasting business, everyone thought they were crazy.
What, by spending tons of money to create these original
and
content?
They said we don't have any advertising. You just pay a fixed monthly amount, and everybody's like, "Oh, you create." Now
I still think they're crazy.
But they're the best. Some of the best TV shows, Sopranos, whatever, Entourage, etc. Came out of HBO. The Wire.
Luck is the latest one.
Yeah,
with Dustin Hoffman. They put tons of money in that. I mean, Michael Mann's directing that stuff. I mean,
amazing.
I think they spend on some of these shows. They're saying it's like $1 million an episode or something like that, or $1.5 million an episode. And people want a 1 hour movie. That's the thing. The consumers are so demanding these days. We want a 1 hour movie. Yeah. You look at Mad Men or Breaking Bad. I don't know if you've seen some of these shows.
Yes,
they're great, right? Yeah. But yeah, they're 1 hour movies. They're beautiful and they're expensive, right?
Very expensive to make. But if you think about it now, HBO has actually said, you know what, if you pay a fixed monthly fee, you get no advertising, high quality content. So that's the key, essentially.
People are paying for that, aren't they?
Yeah, people are willing to pay. I mean, everyone. That's how Apple changed with iTunes and iTunes Store initially. People were saying, "Oh, nobody wants to buy MP3s because it's available for free."
Yeah.
Whereas the key thing is not just the price. The key thing is how easy can you have access to content.
Yeah.
Ease of use again.
There's various degrees of free. I read an article about that. And if you can get something delivered in a perfect way to your perfect device on demand that you know is legitimate.
For the right price.
For the right price.
Yeah.
It's still 99p isn't cheap, is it? For a song.
It's not, but it's not expensive either.
Yeah.
You see, it's easy. And it just, you're there, you just click and it's there.
Right.
Yeah. And they made it. I mean,
I would have been the first one saying there's no way you can go from people pirating music fairly easily on the web to paying for it on iTunes.
I mean, think about it. Back in the days, and it's not that much actually, like in mid 2000, 2005, 2004, an SMS was 80 or 90p.
Really? That much? An SMS?
And it's like,
think about that, people. A text message.
100 something characters. And if any focus group you'd ask, are you willing to pay a pound? It used to be even more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, a pound for 100. I don't know how. Actually, I'm ashamed to say I don't remember how many characters were on the telecom for a long time. But 146 or 150, I don't know what it is. Characters. Are you willing to pay £1? Everybody probably would say no.
Right.
But the value of an SMS is that you get instant gratification of sending whatever you emotionally feel at that time to someone, and you know that person is going to get it in one point of time.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's not you waiting for someone to answer your call, etc. It's just that you send a message.
And you know it's going to go through, so it's different than an email. It's so emotional, isn't it?
Yeah. And nobody thought about it's going to cost you 90p. Everybody knew.
But it's still worth it.
Nobody thought about it. So it's just sent, and you just keep on sending.
Just the whole emotional marketing again.
Huge.
Dude, I wonder sometimes, we're obviously constantly plugged into our phone. If you leave your phone and don't have it for 24 hours, I mean, you feel empty, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's like, what's going on with that? As far as, and we're constantly being gratified, texts, this, that, checking our phone, looking at Facebook, seeing the updates.
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, what's going on with that?
There was a French philosopher, I don't remember his name, but he said any new technology has always a bad side effect.
Okay.
So the question is, whether we like to be narcissistic and have everything we live in our life open to everybody else to see on Facebook or whatever, Twitter, talk about everything all the time.
What's your call on Facebook? I mean, you've been in the technology industry for a long time. You have a good feel for a lot of this stuff. Do you use it?
A little bit.
You just got an account, didn't you?
Yeah, I have an account. No, I've had an account for a long time, but I never used it.
You don't have the DL?
Yeah, and I was doing it for for due diligence reasons back in the days, and I was but it's you know what? I don't want all my life to be online, man.
You're old school.
I like it. I like it as a tool for putting professional stuff out. For instance, if I have a business or if you have a product you want to market, and but I have no problem if somebody. I could be my own product. As an example, if you're an actor or if you're a musician, artist, you are your own product as your brand name.
Right.
And I think it makes sense because you need to manage your brand, and then you need to manage it in all aspects of that brand. And online today is the most important today when it comes to some of this digital content. So if you're a musician, you have to be online.
Yeah,
you have to.
I think if you're any celebrity, really. I mean, the UFC now, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, they give bonuses for guys that are active on Twitter.
Yeah.
They give like monthly bonuses, whoever has the most creative Twitter or the most people.
It's amazing.
They just use that it's just a constant marketing force. Dana White loves Twitter. He's like, it's one of the greatest inventions ever. He's a huge proponent on it. When the fighters walk out, it has their Twitter account below their walkout when they go to fight.
It's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? Dana just says, what Dana likes about it is it cuts through all the press, and he can go straight to his fans and tell them what's on his mind.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to wait for someone to interview him or someone to quote him or put him in an article. He can just talk.
It's direct marketing. It's the best way of marketing yourself because you're the one in charge. On top of that, I mean, just again, as I mentioned, good and bad. I mean, there are good side and bad side. Good side. I mean, look at this entire Arab Spring movement, man. All these. I mean, we forget about how the fact that we're lucky we can talk about anything, read anything, and it's open to everybody. I mean, this is their only source.
Information is controlled.
To receive and give out information.
Right. What's your call on the Arab Spring? I mean, we'll talk about this later because you and I talk about, or you brought this concept up to me as far as an immigrant mind.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about this.
Sure.
You're an immigrant. I'm an immigrant.
Yes.
If people think about it, they're probably immigrants too, wherever they are in the world, or a few generations removed. But I mean, you're originally from Iran before you moved to Sweden.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the Arab uprisings and the Arab Springs? I mean, started in Tunisia, went to Egypt. Syria now is battling theirs. Right. Obviously, Libya had their spring. What's your call on the whole thing? Or what do you see when you see Tahrir Square in Egypt kicking off?
It's when this entire thing kicked off, I think through Tunisia.
There was the guy the self-immolated guy in the
Yes.
fruit vendor in Tunisia. Not even in Tunis. It was like in some
Yeah.
backwater town. He was tired of getting shook down
Yeah.
by the local dudes on his fruit stand, and he burned
Exactly.
himself.
And that's somebody who's had enough. I mean, you have to. It's not easy to do. Just put yourself on fire.
No.
You have to have enough of this.
With
And the
was
young
it
person.
the Buddhist monks in the Vietnam War. Is
Yeah.
it the first time we saw it?
I think so.
I think so. Such a powerful statement, isn't it?
And it's
really
tough.
hits home.
It does, and it's an emotional thing as well. And I think he was a young person, and most of these countries are very young.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
Middle
forget,
East.
right? Iran as well, right?
Iran
Is it
has
over 50% of the population is under 21 or something?
70% of the population are under 28.
How is that?
That's very young. Very young.
Is that just because they're having more children?
They used to have. I think they stopped it. They probably have less.
Probably coming back the other way.
Yeah, because they're stopped. Back in the days, I remember they were saying we need the children revolution, so contraception was banned for a while. But then they realized, oh crap, we went from 30 million to 70 million in 20 years, and that's too many. I mean, double the population in 2 decades is just not easy on resources of a country.
Yeah.
So they put back like regulations and teaching people. From what I read,
Because China had the one child policy for a while. They still do?
yes,
Okay.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. So when you see those uprisings, what do you think of?
I think it's interesting. I think it's good first and foremost that it's an organic movement. Maybe they're helped or not, I don't know, but it's an organic movement from people who've had enough. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that an idealistic view of, all right, like in Egypt, they managed to get Mubarak out of office, then what?
Yeah, well, I mean, I read a lot from this company called Stratfor. I don't know if have you been to Stratfor.com?
Yes,
They
you
actually-
sent me.
Okay, yeah, and then he's basically said the military has been controlling Egypt for the last 50, 60
yeah.
years anyway. So Mubarak was really, and they're still controlling it, and probably will for a long time. I mean, there's a different perceptions with what we see in BBC and what's really happening behind the scenes. Just like in Libya, I mean, people were like Libya oil, but actually they contribute a very small amount of oil to the global economy.
Very little,
very small, and then it's all politics, really. I mean, Syria. I mean, how come we don't have a NATO no-fly zone over Syria? It's because there's a lot of politics involved there, and we can't really fuck with Syria.
And
like
it's stability issues. I mean, if you take Egypt is having a peace pact with Israel. You can't just move that out. That's instability in region. That region is, European First and Second World War. I mean, a lot of people died, and after that, I think the Europeans just had enough.
Yeah,
they're like, we had enough.
We just want stability.
Yeah, we just want stability. We don't care about religion, and we don't want religion to be part of the state. We don't care about this. It's about freedom. It's about constitution. It's about law. It's about peace. But it took 2 world wars.
And a lot of deaths.
A lot of death. I mean, I don't know how many during Second War. In Germany, the Holocaust, 6 million.
Russians
20
lost
million.
20 million, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about million. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you go back to Middle East, and Middle East is going through that process. It's going through that process. But some of the issues out there have been there for a long. I mean, people forget. They think Jesus was a blonde, blue-eyed person. He was born in Middle East. So was Moses. So was Muhammad. They were all coming from there. That region is old and have had a lot of issues from before. I mean, and it's been there for thousands of years. Not only religious, they've been there from ethnical and religion and many different aspects to it.
Claiming
wars of kings and so on and so forth.
And claiming real estate. And
exactly. Claiming the land belonged to who and what. Yeah. So the Middle Eastern issue is.
You're talking about stability, and it's interesting because as much as Israel doesn't get along with Syria, and Israel bombs their potentially nuclear facilities, Israel is happy with the Syrian regime because it keeps stability in the region.
Yes, I mean for instance,
it's
the
such
biggest
a chess game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's like Saudis yell at Israel being bad to the Palestinians, but they don't really give a fuck. They want stability, right? And Egypt they get shit because they did a peace treaty with Israel, but they don't really give a shit. They want the money coming in, the aid coming in from the U.S., right? It's such a. And I mean, let's be honest, and let's also say you're Persian, you're not Arab. There's a big difference between the two.
But to be honest, I don't really care.
I believe you.
Yeah. The funny thing is, after a while, once you live, I've lived in a lot of different countries, and after a while, you just become a world citizen with a big flavor of my background being Iranian and Persian, and growing up in Sweden, and just a flavor of my background and culture, but I really don't care that much because I think the issues are global. I think the people are the same. Politics and politicians are distorting everything.
Right.
I mean, my wife is American,
right,
and I'm Iranian. I grew up. I mean, it's just the same, man.
Right. People would think there could be a potential conflict there, but
it's so funny. We always make a joke about the axis of evil and great Satan. So my wife being the great Satan, I'm being the axis of evil, and my child being the evil Satan.
Evil Satan.
Because it's a mix of both.
On that note, let me just say, what if we could sit down right now with the Ayatollah and the president and sit him down and say, let's just talk some peace here. I mean, besides the history of the great Satan, which is what Iran calls the U.S., and the U.S. calls them that, one of the axes of evils. I mean, and let's be honest. I mean, the bombing in Beirut was attributed to Iran, and we lost 300 fucking CIA guys, and the guys at Stratfor are still mad about that. Yeah. And all the drama in the embassy and all the shit that we did. But at the end of the day, I mean, is there any reason not to cooperate with these two nations?
I don't. You know what? I think communication is. I mean, one of the problems right now is there is no communication.
Okay.
Whatsoever, and that's not good. Even during the Cold War, U.S. and Soviet Union used to talk on a regular basis.
Okay.
And keep the communication lines open, and that's important because looking at a country like Iran, I was looking at Economist a few weeks ago. I had a table, and Iran has they're number one in gas and oil reserves in the world. Then it's Saudi Aramco.
Really? Okay.
Then it's Venezuela, number 3. So. You're talking about the number one reserve of gas and oil in the world.
Is in the ground, basically.
In the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, so they sit on it. They have pretty much other stuff as well. So once you see the facts, it's very simple. This is politics. It's about oil in that region.
Yeah. There's a reason.
Nothing else.
Yeah. What was that country in Africa that had all the people killing each other 10 years ago?
Nigeria? Rwanda?
Rwanda. Yeah. Right. It was a reason we didn't go into Rwanda and stop everyone from killing each other. There's no resources there. Unfortunately. It's just not, it's not economic.
It's not economic. Yeah.
So it's interesting what you say about Iran.
So conflicts are like that. And nowadays, and again, this week's Economist, the cover page is Iran and the bomb next to it.
Yeah,
and so on.
I saw that. Right.
And it's very interesting because you read through it, say, the president has been saying death to Israel. They've been saying that for 30 years, but because there is no media, now it's internet and it's open media, now people know about it. But they've been saying that since 79, 80, when there was the revolution. So they've been saying that for over 30 years.
Okay.
But they've never really done it.
Right.
Because they know they can't do it.
Right. They can't.
I mean, even if it's not.
The retaliation would be.
I mean, you're talking about everything just destroyed.
Right. Why do they use that as a tool to keep the population interested? Is it a scapegoat? Is it just?
Yeah, I mean, they have to find a way to survive, and the current regime. I mean, they're not anymore even a religious regime.
Okay.
They're using.
Is it hard times in Iran for the?
I think for young people and for average, yes, especially with the sanctions, and I think first and foremost, I don't believe in war. I think war is really not good.
Okay.
Because if anyone goes into war, then what you will do is you unify the people against whoever is starting the war. Whereas right now, people are not happy.
Right.
So organically, in one point in time, it has to be some kind of a change. It has to. You can't just, because the time goes on and the people who run the country become old and die out. And the next generation, they just don't want this anymore because they live in difficult times. They don't like it. They know they have a wealthy country, but why is the economic situation is so bad? Okay. They understand that.
Do people remember the Iraq-Iran war in Iran? Well, of course they do, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big war. 1 million people dead, both sides.
Each side, right?
4 million handicapped. I mean, it's not good.
Wow.
I think nobody wins in war. That's the thing. Whereas the other side is, there's this hate rhetoric going on, on each side. Oh, death to Israel and Americans. The Israelis to Iran will take you out, etc. But when it comes to an actual war, I don't think anybody will benefit.
No one
will benefit.
No one. Stratfor goes over the geography of Iran, and there is no physical way to even attack that country. It's just you're asking for a problem. You think Afghanistan's hard with the mountains?
Mountains across.
The mountains in Iran, it's just no upside, and it couldn't be done. Just like you couldn't do a land attack on North Korea.
As well.
Yeah, it's a huge country.
It's a huge country.
Look at it on the map. And what about the Strait of Hormuz and Iran mining that? And that obviously that screws them over as well, right?
Because, yeah. I mean, right now the problem is
if that happened right now, What would that do to the global economy?
I think last time anybody did something like this, essentially hiking up the oil price, that's what happens.
Okay.
And I think 1974, I'm reading a book called The Oil Kings. It's about, it's a very interesting book actually. It's about Saudi, Iran, and US during Nixon and onwards.
Okay.
And 1974, I think Shaw hiked up the price of something during OPEC. And what happened was essentially Greece went bankrupt, Spain went bankrupt, Portugal went bankrupt, and Italy, I think, at the same time. Funny enough, all the fascist countries, like at the time there was Franco, I think still Franco, and
maybe
it was extreme right wing, and they all went bankrupt.
Wow,
because they couldn't make it.
Their economies just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, and in the U.S., gas lines, etc. So I mean, oil is a very powerful tool right now. But
it runs GDPs. I mean, we're talking like growth rates dropping to like -5%, -10%.
Easily.
Which just, I mean, you think this recession's been bad. I mean, this would just crush
You will go
people.
I think you will go to either a very deep recession or almost a depression, because, I mean, oil is the basis of all the work you have to do. I mean, the manufacturing, the productions, everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just fuel. It's involved in manufacturing of products as well.
Everything.
Just everything, right?
Everything.
I hate it when people always say, oh, they're like when the U.S. first went into Kuwait, was it 91, I think it was, to liberate that. Oh, they're over there just for the oil. Yeah, they're over there for your welfare and your livelihood. And just what happens when growth rate goes to -10%, we'll see how much people are complaining.
I mean, to be honest, I can understand why, the Middle East issue is not a local issue. It's a global issue.
Yes.
It's a global problem, because they sit on 80% of oil. And if it's not managed in a way that, everybody gets their chunk and in the right way for the right market price, and not being manipulated through whatever means that, for instance, closing the Strait of Hormuz, etc. And it's a global issue. If anybody creates problem, then they have problem with other bigger powers.
Right.
And the superpowers are U.S., it's China, it's Russia. And then you get, India and some of the other ones like Brazil are coming up as well, the BRIC countries.
Yeah.
And right now it's Russia and China backing Iran, especially when the Iran and Israel-U.S. case.
They're just doing it really just because they don't want.
Because of oil, man. There's no other reason.
And they want to fuck with the U.S., right?
Yeah. I mean, there's this power play going on right now as well.
It's funny to see how Russia will back the Syrian government when they're obviously just slaughtering their own people.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's in Putin's interest to have America destabilized or to have them overstretched and all that stuff.
That's currently, but U.S. is so strong, man. So going back again to your first question, Apple, why is Apple doing X, Y, Z, and why is we can't do the same Foxconn in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because you take a country like China, 1.6 billion people.
Is it 1.6?
Or even more, I think. It's huge.
Gosh, I didn't realize.
It's a huge amount of people.
1.3 or something.
So segueing back to that.
Because you never answered that question, did you?
I mean, and you look at Foxconn and you look at a country like China. So you take Beijing or Shanghai, and you just drive an hour out, you're in almost 11th century.
Is it really like that?
It's old. It's rickshaws. It's no light. It's huts. I mean,
serious.
People live. I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly what wages, but maybe $1 a day type. Bless you.
Excuse me. That's my first on-camera sneeze. So it's just basics.
So if you go from there to somebody offers you a job, even if it's like 14, 15-hour job in a complex somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but pays maybe $100 a month or whatever, 10 times more. You're going from nothing to something. Right,
which is something real. But everyone always looks at it as exploiting the people.
But that's the thing. In West, we don't have that. Okay. We don't have that extreme poverty.
Right.
Or extreme. We don't have that
So
anymore.
we just look at the few people that are jumping off the top of Foxconn buildings and we scream, this is wrong?
Well, not necessarily. I think what happens is once you get to a position like that and you work for a few years, that's how unions come up. That's how you start realizing, wow, maybe this is not the best either. I need something more. I need maybe a little more rest or whatever it is that you need. And these guys, these companies, sometimes they run I remember we used to run 3 shifts, 24/7.
Yeah, that's what I've read about.
Yeah.
Is this the ones that were making the Sony Ericsson handsets?
Sony Ericsson back in the days. And we were paying very well for Chinese standards. So the people who were working there making good money for their standard. Compared to Western world, they're not making good money.
Right, but compared to the alternate there.
But compared to their worst case scenario, I mean, compared to the U.S. worst case scenario with U.S. manufacturing job and Chinese worst case scenario with a Chinese manufacturing job. The worst case scenario in China is that you don't have any vaccination, you don't have any clean water, your food. I mean, you're you're back in 500 years ago.
Right. So this money it's real opportunity. It's game changing, generation changing opportunity for them.
Yes, and they come up and they learn maybe and I understand that they want to one point in time have better conditions, and that's what's happening. Foxconn they have to give them better conditions.
Right. Well, they're getting a lot of pressure now from the West. Is this similar to 18th century America, where you see books like The Jungle, which was talking about the meat packing industry in Chicago and how they'd exploit these Eastern Europeans? I mean, they exploited them 24/7, maybe similar to what's going on in China.
As sweatshops, man.
And they're living, they would also rent them the houses and exploit them there. And like every aspect of their lives was controlled by these manufacturing companies until someone wrote a book about it, and then things got better.
And I think that's, you see, in China, we're talking about again 1.6 billion. I don't know how many, even if you're 5 billion working in manufacturing like this, or 10 billion, 500 million people working. Right. Which is not the case.
Right, it's less than that.
It's probably less than that. You still have like 2/3 of the population that could work in the industry. So it will take some time for them to come to a position where they're at least in the, let's say, the beginning of industrial revolution of Europe.
Okay.
Where it started.
So Obama asked Steve Jobs, and he was still alive like a year or two ago, at some entrepreneur conference. He's like, when are we going to get these jobs back to America?
That's the kind of wrong jobs. I mean, everybody talks about that. It's very interesting.
Steve said to him, these jobs aren't coming back.
No, they're not. And they shouldn't either.
And they shouldn't. Okay.
I think actually the job to innovate, to educate, to create like they're doing, that's the kind of job you want to create more of. So what's happening, the designers, the developers, the high-end architects, those guys, the product planners, that's the kind of job you want. You see, the issues we've had in Anglo-Saxon, in the UK and US is what happened in Scandinavia in 91. 91, Scandinavian countries went bankrupt pretty much.
Really?
Because of the same issues of mortgages and subprime. I mean, very similar to what happened here. So what happened there, they're a smaller country, so they had to put up a strategy, and they did. They said everyone has to be re-educated. People in the old manufacturing jobs, they send them to new training, 1 year, 2 year.
Right.
Learn how to develop,
That's
system
the US
design,
way, isn't it?
IT design, innovation. Then they put a very clear strategy. We need to go towards wireless technology. We need to develop, biotech. So they mobilized the entire country towards a direction, and now they're reaping the benefit of it because now the entire population is re-educated.
Right. But in France, they try to save their unions, or in France, they try to save their steelworks.
Yeah.
Even when ArcelorMittal is killing them in India, they're still trying to save this old industrial manufacturing base, right?
Germany does it well.
Who's
Germany?
that?
Germany is basically having high quality, high level manufacturing, and nobody can do.
Right. That's what they specialize in. The very precise, high end.
So that's the kind of stuff even if you own a company, that's the same thing in Scandinavia. Swedes have a lot of manufacturing jobs in Sweden, but it's the kind of things that the Chinese can't do.
Okay. That precision stuff. That highly educated workforce that can do those things.
Exactly.
As opposed to just make a million smartphones.
So
push them together.
If you want to bring the very low end job with even higher salary back to US, who's going to do the jobs? It's not going to be your average American. It's going to be immigrants from probably Mexico and so on and so forth. And it's artificial job creation that doesn't really give a long-term development.
Right. Well, the article in the Times said that it can't be done anyways. They said the U.S. cannot mobilize and cannot scale up on that factor. You've seen China. It's true, right?
Yeah. And there's if you close all the factories and throw all the employees out, you can have the day after the same number because there are 100 million, 200 million more people who had that extreme difficult situation, extreme poverty, that are willing to take the job because that will help their family and themselves to take the next step up. That's the big difference. That hunger doesn't exist anymore, I think, in the entire Western world, actually.
Right. Now we got to talk about this as we segue into the immigrant mind.
Yeah.
So tell me about your concept of an immigrant mind. And you just talked about it there a little bit.
Yeah. To start with the hunger, I think that an immigrant is somebody who takes a huge risk to improve their life. And we were talking about it earlier, that sense of change to take that risk comes from some kind of a crisis. You live in extreme poverty, or you live in an environment where you are under pressure. Your freedom is under pressure, freedom of thought, whatever it is, and then you decide to leave,
right?
To leave the place where you're born, your language, everybody knows you,
your social infrastructure,
everything,
right.
And then you move to a different place where you're nobody,
right?
No, I mean, everybody laughs at your accent because first and foremost you can't talk the language, so you become an underdog.
This is you in Sweden, for example.
Yeah, I mean, in Sweden or millions of people similar to me, and in other countries as well. Yeah. Right. And you get in there, and you're an underdog, and you have nothing to lose. You have no ego, because there is no ego, nothing to be had. Right. There's zero, and you just have to do your best. You just have this drive. And a lot of people have problem with that, though, because it's not easy. In my case, I was lucky that my parents were educated already, university educated. So they say, an education gives you a step up to next level. So then you do anything, you memorize, you read books day in, day out. You do 10 times more than the native people in that country. That gives you the motivation. That gives you the drive. That builds the hunger to take risk. Bottom line is, you have to be comfortable in an unsecure environment,
right?
On the edge. And 90% or more, maybe, I don't know, people, they don't want to be in that situation.
They don't want to be, but I would say the majority of people, if you put them in that situation, they will survive, right?
They will survive.
Well, there's no choice. You can't go home, can you?
Exactly. So for an immigrant, there is no choice. So how do you create artificially that mindset? Because that's what we want. You want people to have that sense of, actually, it's a sense of freedom, because nobody knows you.
Right.
If you fail, nobody cares.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, that's
Whereas
true.
we are all afraid of failure because, what does my father say, or my friends, or my old colleagues, etc., etc.
True.
You have a sense of, people know me. What if?
Yeah.
Whereas an immigrant, there is no sense of what if. You just roll up your sleeve and you just do. And you keep on doing it until you get over to the next step. And that's, to create that mentality, I think should be the aim for people, to learn from that sense of, no ego, I have nothing to lose, and let's do it.
Right.
But if you're in the Western world and you have that comfort, how do you create that? That's the key, right? And how do you create that? And I think there are tools and there are ways of doing it. For instance, personally, today, every time I feel comfortable, I put myself in a situation. I set something up for myself. Okay,
like a goal, or just something more than that?
It could be a small thing. You could do day-to-day small things, but you could do big. And there are philosophers, Seneca is talking about. There are a bunch of people. I mean, it's been around for, I think, thousands of years, how you develop your personality. Because a normal person just doesn't want to say, okay, I want to create a problem for myself just to develop. But that's what you need to do. Find a place so you can put yourself through the grind.
Right. Well, I mean, as humans, we're just naturally, I hate to use a simple word, but we're naturally lazy. We get to a status quo, and, it's more comfortable not to challenge yourself.
That is true.
To not change cities and go through all that strife,
But again, it goes hand in hand with the way you think. A lot of, you guys, I think, were talking about it in one of your podcasts, and that goes back to power of now, the power of being in presence in the moment. Don't think about. So when you start something, when you want to put yourself in a difficult situation, you don't want to think about what's the outcome. You want to just start it.
Right. Just do it.
It's almost like a Zen Buddhist mentality of, because there is no future and the history is gone. So that's the only time you have. And if you start something, say, let's start it. I don't care what happens.
Right.
I'm just going to do it. And what ifs doesn't, and train your mind into that position of, what if I fail? You shouldn't care.
Right.
What if doesn't matter. That's the only way you can move yourself and give yourself a chance to grow as a person, in my opinion. It's not just about financial success, or it's about personal growth, in my opinion. And that immigrant's mindset, to me, you can see that very clearly in tech business in Silicon Valley, where people just get in there with nothing. And it's that after New York, probably is the most expensive area in the U.S. as well. They all live in small places, and they code day in, day out, and
Why does that exist in Silicon Valley? Because I mean, obviously there are lots of immigrants there, but that's not a place that it is purely immigrants. So how come that mentality is there, and why does it gravitate toward the technology industry? Is it because it's fast moving, or why?
I think technology is colorblind. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that's interesting.
Background, cultural blind.
Okay.
It's an equalizer, I would call it.
Because it's just what can you produce?
How good are you? I mean, it's not about, for instance, if you're going to certain industries, it's about your background, your education, your this, your that. You go to Silicon Valley, you're a good developer, you're good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's very simple.
If you can write that code, then you get the job. We don't care what you look like or what you smell like or
what religion you
even
have,
if
a
you
background.
Speak English or who cares?
Exactly.
Wow, that's an interesting point. Yeah, we talked about something about the Immigrant Mind, which is funny because, well, we both came to London. You went via Sweden. I went from America, but I think we were both talking this. When I got to London as an immigrant and doing a job in the city, it's funny that people always look at immigrants, oh, yeah, they're trying to work their way up. You could look at the way Mexican Americans in the U.S., they're trying to work their way up. And you kind of slight them a little bit. But like as an immigrant, you come in and you think, I can do this better than the locals, True. And we talked about this. I was like, I can do this better than the British can. And maybe it's because I'm hungrier, or maybe I know I have to work harder, or I know I have to work smarter. Maybe that's it.
Smarter.
I have to work differently in order to beat these people at their own game.
And to be honest, I personally like to be an underdog.
Okay.
Because there's no expectation. Everybody think, this guy, look at him. He can't even do this and that. He didn't study at Oxford or whatever. Fair enough. That's good. They don't expect you.
Okay.
It's the samurais back in the day is the place they would get killed was on toilet. They were sitting on a toilet, and the ninjas would gut them from below because that's the moment where the guard is down, they're relaxed.
Okay.
So imagine the ninjas in the shit are down there. They spear them up from
All right. So get people when they're.
So when people don't expect, they don't expect you.
Okay.
They don't expect that you're good or whatever. They don't know that I speak 4 or 5 languages. They don't know I have 2-3 degrees maybe.
So you just roll up and
I'm and it doesn't matter to me. It's fine. I don't care. And they're like, they laugh at you. The same thing, and that's where you want to be. I think that's where you want to be. That there's no expectations. Okay, what if I fail? Well, right, you fail.
Okay.
You do it again. 100 times over. So what if I don't have the biggest car right now? Who gives it? No. Or the biggest flat or the biggest what? Doesn't matter.
Okay.
What matters is that you're gonna do it. You're trying. You're going after it.
So as a CEO, how would you try to cultivate an immigrant mindset in your company?
That's a tough question because that's creating a culture. How do you create a culture where failure is accepted? Because bottom line is every new innovation comes from a mutation of something you were planning to do.
It's a great quote.
Yeah. Most of the
Which
innovations
means it has to be a failure almost by definition.
It almost because that's where you're pushing the boundaries.
Right.
If you're not pushing the boundaries, you don't create anything.
Right.
So innovation and the culture of let's go after it. Let's see what happens. Because if you play it safe, everybody plays it safe.
Right.
Then what's the chance that you win?
Yeah.
If everybody's doing the same, what's the chance that you win? It's very slim.
I know Google for a while had it where their employees would take 10 or 20% of their time and work on special projects, right? It still is, right?
Still is.
And they just work on these crazy projects. And I think one of those became like Google Docs, or one of those became Google Plus and stuff like that. Are they still doing that?
They're still doing that. I think I've seen a lot of guys, friends and startups have done well. We've done ourselves before a few times. And you have to push it, and you have to take the craziest routes that everybody says, it's impossible. You can't do that. That's when you're going towards the right. When everybody says you're on the wrong way, maybe not.
Just the whole contrarian idea.
Exactly. You have to start thinking differently. You have to be. The idea of innovation. What is innovation? What is creativity? Again, you're going back. Some parts come from the hopelessness that I have nothing. What do I do? Like that's again going back to immigrants' mindset. I got nothing. I just came to, as an example, U.S. with nothing.
Right.
You're a Mexican guy, whatever, or whoever, you're a Chinese guy, Iranian guy, whoever you are. Or I came to UK, got nothing. Got to do something. You got to make a living. So you're going. You even go knock on the doors to find a job.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Now you can scale that to a higher scale when it comes to a startup or a technology business or any kind of business. How do you find that alternative ways, different ways of approaching the market? Are you out there looking for it? Do you see the gap? Do you see the trends? Again, going back on our prior planning, half a step ahead, what is happening? It's not necessarily only in your area. And I really look at it, and I've made money, lost money, we've been successful product and also failed a lot as well. But that's part of it. Every time you fail, you learn. We're doing, both of us do jiu-jitsu. How many times have we got tapped by Nick or other guys who are very good? Me, hundreds.
Hundreds. I remember I was learning jiu-jitsu from a guy, and he was talking about putting an arm bar on, and he showed me how to do it. And I was like, how many times do I have to do that until I get it right? And he was like, 10,000. There you go. I was like, are you joking?
It's crazy. But you by losing, you realize, crap, that's just the way it is. Until you don't lose.
Right.
That's the rule.
I guess that is the rule. What? So say you're sitting back listening to this podcast right now, and you're not an immigrant. Say you're in America, or you're in the UK. Yeah. You've been here for 3 generations. You're not going to move anytime soon, and you're thinking, well, okay, that's great, but I'm not going to get an immigrant mindset unless I have to. How would you say they approach that? Or how would you say them to get into that mindset?
I think if you want to develop as a person, to whatever it is, I really don't want to lock that into money or work. I'm thinking about as a person.
Okay.
Everyone wants to grow. Otherwise, you're just, what do you do on earth? Because everybody, we have the same beginning and end. All of us, we're born and we die. What do you do in between? And you want to leave a name or some legacy, then you have to grow as a person. You have to push. You have to find your talents. What is your talent? What is it that you want to grow? What is it that you want to achieve as a person? And then you try different things. When you're a teenager, you don't know, and then eventually you try. And there's never, I do new things all the time. I try to learn new things all the time personally, because I think an education has nothing to do with university and school. You have to educate and learn all the time. And, once you go through that, in one point in time, you start saying, okay, I want to do X, Y, Z. You set goals, you set dreams, and then you just have to go after it. You have to create that difficult situation for yourself. You have to put yourself in a situation where you have no way back. And when everybody says, nah, that's not the way, if you leave, this is what's going to happen. I'm sure they told you, you're leaving US, it's the best place ever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it probably is as well. But for you, when you move and you come here and you go through the struggles, that's when you develop as a person.
Yeah. All the greatest accomplishments always come from strife, don't they?
You have to. As a person, you owe it to yourself to find your core and develop yourself. And you have to put yourself in a difficult situation. There's no other way. There's no other way. And if you can make it a habit by doing something difficult a day, even if it's a small thing. If you don't like to get up early in the morning, do it for a month. Just get up early in the morning. That gives you mental strength.
Right.
I remember when we were doing judo back in the days when I was younger, and sometimes we had this thing that you had to do 1,000 of this, or you're like, this is definitely not useful. It's gonna hurt and it's not useful. But I said, well, it's good for your mental strength.
Right.
They were saying that, the Japanese as well, which is kind of interesting because sometimes it's hurtful, it's not good, but once you go through it, you're over it. You've grown. You just look at your own muscles. It doesn't get strong on its own. It needs resistance. You lift weights, it breaks the muscles. It tears it down, and then when it recovers as a stronger tissue.
Right.
Yeah. Human mind is the same.
It is the same that way. I worked in the city for about 9 years and on a trading desk, and man, it's just a barrage, 10, 12 hours a day of everyone trying to fuck with you and fuck with your head all day and talking shit and getting you. Sometimes you're at a bad moment, so maybe your girlfriend just said some shit and you come in and you're half cocked. You're like, come on, fuck with me. Yeah. But you get so used to everyone just constantly in your head. So now I just know it's very, very hard for someone to get into my head because I've had so much practice with that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, come on, really?
Yeah. And you know what? Everybody doubts. I have self-doubt in some positions where I go to a new area, a new thing. You doubt yourself.
Right. Until you do it.
Is it going to happen or not? But you just have to do it. You just have to. The Japanese have a saying, you want to be tough, be tough.
Is that their saying?
Yeah. I remember I was competing in judo. I say, you think you want to be tough? Okay, go out and be tough. There's no other way. I mean, there's no one who can be tough on behalf of you, or you can just train and not be tough. I mean, tough in the context of competition.
Right.
Just put in.
Wow.
What will happen? What's the worst case? You break your arm? Okay, you go. It's that, and the same thing. You want to be something, you just have to do it. But the self-doubts are there for everyone. I have that all the time. But you have to just keep on talking to yourself, and your inner voice, pushing yourself. Talking to yourself. This is it. You are your own best coach and team member. And that's how you build self-reliance, self-confidence, self-belief, because you just do it.
I got a question for you, and then we're going to wrap this up because it's flowing like an hour. There's some Japanese. I think he was an old school samurai, and he went and Joe Rogan talks about it all the time. He went and fought
Musashi.
Musashi, maybe it was Musashi, and he says once you know something broadly, then you're confident to know in other things in your life.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you found that in the cast, and if anyone's listening doesn't know what I'm talking about, but say that you find that with martial arts, you find that you're very competent after 10 years, and you can do this. Then you get a sense in yourself that I know I can figure things out. And then if it comes to, say, a technology challenge for you or a marketing challenge, because you've had this background where you can solve something, then you know things broadly. Have you found that in your life?
I definitely think that's, I would say, the reason I managed to survive as a young teenager in Sweden, where I came there when I was 12 years old. I didn't know language, nothing.
No Swedish, no English?
Nothing.
Dude, I can't believe
a little bit English because I went to English school when I was little, but not that much. But nothing. So I was just memorizing everything. I went to a judo club because that was the only place. Nobody wanted to be friends with me because obviously I didn't speak the language, etc., etc.
Right.
And it was pretty funny to me. So all right, fuck you. Then I don't want to be friends with you. And I was like, all right, whatever. And I started doing judo, and I just learned something, and I just keep on going. I found my friends there. And it opened the door towards philosophies like Zen philosophy. I started meditating when I was 15, 16.
Wow.
And you find the light, the small light in yourself within the darkness that you're going through as a person, for me at least. It's just difficulties of, being a teenager, on top of that being an immigrant teenager as well.
Sure.
So you go through that. And for me, the martial arts, judo, or any kind of martial arts, because it is so primal, it's about your fear, managing fear, that when I got better, I got physically strong, I got mentally strong. It helped me in my school, it gave me focus. I went to university. I actually look back on my own struggles and how I got through them at that point, which is always difficult for younger people as well.
Yeah.
Is I got good at martial arts. That's simple. I went through that difficulty, which is kind of a metaphor of life almost. And I said, I know it's difficult, but I got through it. So learning a language wasn't that difficult. Learning 2 languages, learning 3 languages wasn't that difficult. I speak German as well. I speak English, Swedish, Persian, whatever. I can learn Italian if I want to. I know that if I want to, I can learn it. And, I can live in any country. I've lived in, I think, 8, 9 countries now.
Wow.
More than a year, at least one of them each.
Wow.
So.
And what about in the corporate world? I mean, when you walk into a boardroom or you walk into a very important meeting where you're trying to cut a deal, I mean, did you find that after all of those years of martial arts experience that you're like, I can handle this? Yeah,
I went in and said, I can handle this. And you know what? The thing is this. If anybody wants to fuck you, no, pull one over you, they will do.
What's that?
If they want to pull one over you and rip you apart and cheat and do whatever in corporate world or business world, they will do it.
Okay.
So regardless of you sharp or not, doesn't really matter. If somebody has bad intentions, they will do it. Okay. Now the question is, how do you get in and not be affected by that? Just go through. And it comes on in your self-confidence, because you get in and you do a deal, you do a work, and whatever happens, happens. And if it's bad, you try to fix it. If it's good, good.
Okay.
You learn from the bad ones, and you try to not make the same mistakes. But your self-confidence is there. Your baseline is there. You're in your elements.
So your worth isn't determined by that next deal.
No, you're not afraid of it.
You've got a base where you're like, okay.
Yeah. Worst case scenario is like, all right, you know what? Okay, all my deals went tits up, as an example. So what? You know, you go and crash on your friend's couch or your mom's or something for a few months until you turn it around.
But life goes on.
Life goes on, and this is the thing. It's not that difficult. We're not living in a place where they bomb us, you know, or they, you know, we can't find you know, something to eat. You know, the basics. That's what I'm saying. Why I'm telling anyone, all my friends, younger people I know, I've been mentoring a lot of young people as well, said take risks. Now, take risk, not meaning like not be stupid, but don't be afraid of going in and setting really high dreams of what you want to do. Sports, business, studies, whatever it is. You want to travel around the world, you can do it.
Right.
It's not that difficult. If I could do it with nothing, you know, I'm sure everybody can do it. And I'm not the smartest, I'm not anything like that. Yeah. A lot of people just don't have the self-belief. And the key thing is you owe it to yourself to build that self-belief. And again, going back to immigrants' mindset, that's what it is. They have to take risks. They have to do it. There's no other way.
Right.
Just get rid of the ego and don't worry about what ifs. Just do, you know.
Do you think our culture is permeated by ego?
I think more than it should be.
Is that a Western thing?
I don't know, man.
Is that everywhere?
I think it's in Western world is more individual. You know, as an individual, you look after yourself all the time. Whereas in Asian Oriental cultures, they're very group minded,
family oriented.
So even if you do very well, you actually do very well for everybody. You try to help everybody else as well. So to them, it's everybody. You have the support regardless of your failure or your win.
Interesting. My dad talks about projecting your ego because he's been I think someone gave him a book on Buddhism or something. He read it and he was like, okay. And he was like, she's like, you know, in almost every conversation, a lot of people project their ego. Oh, I'll tell you how you should do it. You should do it like this. And I think people do it without even noticing it sometimes. And they'll be like, you know, you're just projecting your ego on it. And it's like, okay, just stop that. Maybe just listen a little bit more.
True.
You know, as opposed to constantly, I don't know. And I try to think about that all the time now when I'm talking to people.
Same here, man. I think sometimes I talk more than I should. It's funny when you mention that, like, you know, I think talking about your father, actually my father was saying that as well before, and he was professing religion sociology. So he was saying God made a copy of himself according to religion. So Jesus was Son of God.
Right.
So that's a kind of inherent thing in people. And he was a religious person. It's kind of funny though, what he was saying, like everyone wants everybody else to be like them.
Right.
We give advice, we tell them what to do. But in reality, you can talk about your situation and your personality, your journey, and maybe it could help someone else. But it's not necessarily their journey.
Right.
You know, everyone has to go through their journey. But, you know, sometimes you need moral help. See if, somebody did it in that way. And, you know, if he can, I can as well. You know?
Oh, that's a good point. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That whole Son of God thing is interesting. I guess that's by definition an ego projection.
Isn't it?
Which is our whole Judeo-Christian values, right? Dude, that hour flew by, man. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate all the perspectives. We got to get you back in the future, you know?
Happy to be here.
All right, cool, man. Well, we got another week and without Mr. Gabriel, and then he'll be back. So until then, keep tuning in, and it's about the journey. Thanks, Mike.
Rock on.
All right, dude.
Bye-bye.